Hi, everyone. This is Eric Trigestad here with the Christian Chronicle, and I'm joined today by Evan Totticini. I'm pronouncing that correct. Both
Mhm.
of us have interesting last names. Evan is assistant minister for the Salt River Church of Christ in Mesa, Arizona. This is a congregation that I've visited. I've stayed with one of their members, Aaron Sales, who continues to be a provider of wonderful citrus fruit to my home, sending it through the mail. Oranges and lemons that are as big as like huge lemons. So that he's been a real blessing in my life. And this is a wonderful congregation that does an amazing work among American Indians, specifically the Navajo population. Evan, thanks for joining me today. It's good to see you again, brother.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, I the last time we talked, you told me a little bit about your experience growing up in the Navajo Nation and how you became a follower of Christ. I wonder if you could run our viewers here through that briefly, just kind of give them a snapshot of where you are spiritually.
Yeah, so I was born and raised on the Navajo Reservation, which is northeast Arizona and very rural part of the state and really the country. I ultimately was raised traditionally, so I've got full families on both sides, my mom and my dad's side, who have several people who are spiritual leaders. We would call them medicine men in the Navajo culture. And people are really our source of wisdom. They're the people we go to conduct ceremonies, to conduct peyote meetings and that kind of thing. And so that's really how I was raised. I was exposed to the Church of Christ a little bit. There was a missionary in my hometown in Kayenta, and he ultimately was able to work with my mom and meet with her, and as a result, we would attend services time after time, but it wasn't anything regular. It wasn't until I left high school and moved down and went to Arizona State. And looking back now, I see that I really was searching for truth. I had taken world religion courses. Josh Austin, who ultimately would convert me, who's now a guy that I work with and alongside. He reached out to me because we had known each other, him being from Kayenta as well, and asked if I would be open to a Bible study. And I said yes. Myself and my girlfriend, my wife now at the time, were pregnant with our son Chase, and I just wanted to know, okay, what's my conviction spiritually? What am I going to choose to follow, and ultimately, what am I going to teach my son? So I really was on a pursuit of truth. I had again been raised traditionally Navajo culture. I was taking world religion classes at Arizona State and having Bible studies on the side with Josh once a week. So there was a lot of things that were kind of at a head, and I really just wanted to see what rationally and logically makes sense and what I could verify. And ultimately, God's word prevailed unequivocally. It was a landslide. I could just see, I could understand. And after coming to Christ and being baptized, my girlfriend and I, 3 months later, after our conversion, our son Chase, who was a year and a half old, he caught bacterial meningitis out of the blue, and he died within a week. So it was something that happened unexpectedly. It happened very quickly, and we were just sitting there in the hospital, just stunned, like what happened? Our son just died, and a lot of those emotions came back up. God, we just gave our life to you. I converted out of my culture, and how was this? This doesn't make any sense. And so really that was the time that I had to make the stand, whether I was going to go back to what I felt comfortable with, a religion that I knew very well, or continue to hold on to the promises found in God's word and continue to work through this. And so ultimately we hung on. We just continued to read the promises that were found, and God provided a lot of resources for us, His church, and study material. So try to lean not so much on emotion as kind of the logic behind it. Try to follow what made sense. And so again, God's word continued to be that source of comfort for us. And so really, that was the pivot point for us. That was the springboard. And only a few months later, we'd say, okay, we have the peace, we have comfort. I don't know how other folks and people get up each day having gone through a tragedy like this without God's word and His promises. So we made it a mission that we were going to pursue full-time ministry. Again, we were just so young in the faith, but we were like, people have to know this. Our people have to know this peace and this hope. So then we went off to Bear Valley, and went to a preacher training school and finished that up. And after Bear Valley, entered on full-time work, and now we've been working here. So it's been a roller coaster of a ride, to say, at the very least. But God continues to provide. He is so good to us, and we're so very thankful. So, kind of in a nutshell, that's how we came to be where we are.
Outstanding. The thing that is really interesting to me about the Salt River congregation is that you guys are a church developed for Native Americans who have moved into the big city, the Phoenix metro, as it
Right.
were, and kind of maybe feel a sense of disconnection. Sometimes they would have been part of churches back on the reservation, and then so you guys kind of address that need and give them that sense of community, home away from home, almost. I think.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so can you tell us a little bit though, because a lot of us probably don't realize the breadth and scope and population of the Navajo Nation. Tell us a little bit about that demographically, and then tell us a little bit about how this community has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, because I understand that it's been pretty severe.
Sure. Well, the Navajo tribe, again, there's somewhere, I guess, north of 600 tribes that are federally recognized across America. Here in Arizona, there's about 21 tribes, and so the Navajo tribe is just one of several hundred. And so the Navajo tribe is the largest tribe, and occupies the more land, more than any other tribe in America. And so the census count, I believe, 5, 6 years ago, was about 325,000 people who registered Navajo, and each tribe decides on what the blood quantum is for you to be able to register. So the Navajo selects a quarter, so you've got to be at least a quarter blood quantum to qualify. So that's a pretty big portion. And so we've had 325,000 folks. The actual reservation that the Navajo occupy is larger than the state of West Virginia. So a lot of folks don't realize how huge that is, and it is very big. Amongst the reservation, there's about 10 congregations of the Lord's Church, and the highest you'll get will probably be around top out about 20, 25 folks. So the need for the gospel is huge. And so with that many people, of course, anybody that's have any experience driving through or in a reservation in general will notice the third world like conditions in these areas, and which is what I'll get to, and how COVID has affected the tribal people. And again, this isn't just Navajo. We've been able to touch base with the Apache and the Hopi, and their effect, COVID's effect on them is very similar to the Navajo people. So really three main reasons as to why COVID has run rampant. At one point, I believe in June, the Navajo Nation per capita topped out the three major cities, DC, and I think it was San Francisco and New York. So per capita, there were more COVID cases, and the death count was also higher. I was looking online just a while ago, and it says that we have just about 600 folks who have been killed by COVID in the area, and there have been several thousand cases. So this really is because, number one, the diet of the Navajo people is very poor. We've begun to buy into kind of the unhealthy foods, and so there was a report put out by a few professors at Dinek College on the Navajo Reservation, and they said really two reasons as to why it's running rampant. It's because of our poor diet, which has led to chronic diseases, diabetes, and bad, heart disease and stuff is prevalent on the Navajo Reservation. And so, because of those diseases and those illnesses, COVID has really been able to jump on that and be able to tear away at that. But also the lack of healthcare and infrastructure to treat. So if you were able to Google that and view pictures, you'll see how creative the medical teams have had to get in order to treat and administer tests, and to treat folks who have come down with COVID. And so that's another. And the third thing would be just the way that we live. The natives are very similar to the Hispanic culture in that we have multi-generational homes. We've got several different people that are living together, and that's just how we live. And so huge families. So you're not able to isolate when somebody does get the virus, so it's easily spread. And then a lot of homes don't have running water, electricity. So if the easiest way to fight COVID is to just maintain good hygiene, well, if you don't have good water or heated water, how are you supposed to do that? So only a third of all homes on the reservation have both running water and electricity. So having water in general is a huge problem. And when you don't have all those things put together, it just makes a really good equation for what COVID does. And so all of those factors together really have wreaked havoc on the Navajo tribe.
And I can imagine that with the membership of the Salt River congregation being so heavily American Indian, you guys you've had a lot of personal connections to this tragedy. Have you had members who've been impacted by this, lost family members back on the reservations?
Yeah, fortunately we have. I know in the Kayenta congregation in my hometown, there was a woman there with several children and a husband. She caught COVID, and she had underlying health conditions, and she lost her life to COVID. And so several members here in the reservation, here at Salt River, know people, family, friends that have not only been affected but have been killed by the disease. And that's just the Navajo. You talk about Salt River, you talk about the Pima Reservation and the Apache Reservation. Those are not doing well as well. So several of those cases.
What is the mood like on the reservations now and among your congregation as you consider? Is hopelessness creeping in? There other things that you're noticing there from a ministerial standpoint?
Absolutely. I mean, even pre-COVID, you were aware of some of those stats: the unemployment rate, the poverty rate, the domestic violent rate, the suicide rate. All of those pre-COVID were already it already created this dim blanket over the reservation, and a lot of those, especially those who see it in an alternative to taking their life, they're just overwhelmed with this darkness, and that there is no light at the end of the tunnel type of sense. And so you add COVID on top of that. Now folks are restricted to just their homes. They're not able to go out. Some of the things that brought happiness and enjoyment were taken away. And so it's really, when I go back, and I travel back a lot, especially as winter goes on, to haul wood and to help the elders and stuff like that. Everybody's just so run over with fear. Fear is everywhere. Don't do this. Don't do that. You can't go in. And so it's that fear of this virus has really overtaken the people. And unfortunately, it has bled into their spiritual wellness as well. So the churches are really hurting. They haven't been able to meet since March. So a lot of us have not been to the assemble for several weeks, and we were so eager to get back. Well, imagine some of these brethren who it is against the law. Of course, the Navajo reservation is they have their own laws, and so they're unable to meet and gather more than 5 people. And then we'll get into the weekend shutdowns, which prohibit any assembly on Sundays in general. So just fear is overtaking them, and I just try to share some of that hope that our citizenship is in heaven. That's where we ultimately are looking for and looking toward.
Tell me a little bit about the relief efforts that the Salt River congregation has done to try and help in the midst of this terrible pandemic.
Yeah, so he has really blessed us with a membership and people just willing to get out and help in any way that we can. Of course, being off the reservation in Mesa, we have a little bit more looseness. We can go out and gather some supplies. And so Salt River, we've taken a total of 6 or 7 COVID relief trips, both to the Navajo, the Apache, well, 3, Navajo, Apache, and the Hopi. And so we're able to distribute these goods. And what we did is we just went out to the Costco's and the Sam's Clubs and try to get stuff bulk. So we got canned goods, water, cleaning supplies, and I'd be lying if I say there were some times we didn't have to kind of rub elbows with folks to say, hey, we need this more than you do. And so we would have events where we would have the congregation come at probably in the evenings and the nighttime, and we would just distribute these things and categorize them, put them in bags, and then we would load them onto flatbed trucks, and then we would take trips. So Josh, myself, and several others, my cousin Reggie, who's half Apache, we just taken trips up. It almost seemed like for the whole summer we were just every other weekend just loading up and taking trips up there, and that's kind of segued now into trying to haul wood for keeping warm for these cold winter months that lie ahead.
And what has the response been to that? Those acts of generosity coming from the church. What are you hearing from the folks that you've been able to serve?
Yeah, it's so the mood is so very dark that any glimpse of light is just such an encouragement to folks around. I can't help but see and believe that God, even in the darkest moments, is able to use people to shine His glory and His hope and His message. So those who have received those packages, very thankful. We've been trying to put them in touch with local missionaries there that are in the area and try to point them, and again, it's tough because you can't really necessarily meet with folks that may be prospects, but they enjoy it a whole lot, and so at least they're able to join us, and that has really helped our online worship services and Bible studies because we're able to hand out material with these physical generous acts, and so they're able to write in questions. We're able to have correspondence courses go out, which is a huge ministry now at our congregation. And so we're able to engage with them spiritually after we've given them some of that those bags and COVID relief packages.
That's great. You kind of touched on this earlier, but you and your wife endured a terrible tragedy early in your Christian walk. I almost see a parallel there to this terrible tragedy that all of us really are kind of going through right now, but especially the folks that live on these reservations. Is there anything that you can say to help all of us and them especially the folks on these reservations to kind of get through these dark times? Is there anything that you kind of pull from your own experience of dealing with the tragic loss of your own child that you find helpful as you talk to folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I could preach for 2 hours on a message. I particularly hold on to two passages. The first passage when David lost his son in Second Samuel, and the realization that David went through when he realized my son died. There's nothing I can do about it, but what I can control is my faithfulness to God now. And he says that I can't bring my son back to me, but I'm going to go to him now. I'm gonna get my life reoriented, refocused, which is why he entered into worship into the temple, and he began to get his life right back on track, and then writing Psalm 51 afterwards. So that passage really affected me. Of I can't bring my son back, so that's out of my control. But what can I control now? Well, I can control my faithfulness. I can control how much I lean and trust on God. So that's what I'm going to do. And I think James says it a little bit differently in James 1, and consider it all joy, my brethren, when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. I think the thing that we have all got to do when experiencing a trial is we've got to zoom out of our situation and examine the big picture. At large, we understand that life is temporary, it is not fair, and we know the ruler of this world is Satan. So when I understand those three basic concepts, I realize, okay, my pain is very temporary, and as long as I keep the right focus and the right mindset, my goal, my destination, I look forward to that even more. And so, understanding that this world is very temporary, not to get too attached to it, which is why Paul says my citizenship is in heaven. That's where my home is, and so having the right perspective, I think, is probably the greatest thing that has helped us. Is and again, it's not the easiest thing, which is why James says to consider it all joy. You got to lead your mind to think that way. It doesn't happen naturally. You've got to train your mind. Romans 12:1 and 2. So that would be kind of my urge to anybody experiencing this.
I've said before that one of the terrible blessings of this pandemic is that it's shaken me out of my comfort and realized that there is something better beyond this, and I long for that.
Right.
Anything to get me out of 2020, sometimes I must say, that we long for Christ's return in the world to come. So that's been a bizarre, painful, terrible blessing of this pandemic, perhaps. So
Sure.
anyway. Want to make sure that I give you a chance to put in a plug for your online Bible study here. That's something that you started up. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how folks might be able to access that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we it's very grassroots, very raw. I'm not by any means somebody who's able to do a lot of the digital and online media type stuff. But what I do is Crystal and myself, my wife, we wanted to make sure that we continue to get Bible studies together as a husband and a wife, and just make sure spiritually we're continuing on amidst all the chaos. So Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. we have what I call a recharge study, and it really just started with both of us, and we opened it up and just said, hey, if anybody else joins, that's great. It's really just meant for us, but whoever wants to join, you're welcome to. And so we do that via Zoom. The Zoom information is on our website. So we do have a website for the congregation that has this information. So our website is saltriverchurchofchrist.com. You'll find all the information there. If you want to get in contact with anybody as far as donating for some of these efforts, that's tremendous as well, or just to keep up to date with what's going on. Other than that, my Facebook platform is really what I like to utilize. The majority of natives that have access to the internet, they're more familiar with Facebook. Internet is not something that everybody has on the reservation. I think sometimes we forget that, but they're a few years behind several cities and areas that have these blessings of technology. So Facebook tends to be the biggest platform that we use, along with YouTube. So
Very good. And it's called a recharge. Is that what you went with?
recharge, yes. Middle of the week, even Wednesday evening when we get together with the assembly. If we get together, sometimes that still is I'm tired, had a long day, and so hopefully this kind of just does exactly that. God's word, His wisdom to recharge us heading into the weekend, preparing ourselves for the end of the week, and coming to the first day to prepare ourselves for the Lord's Day on Sunday.
Okay. Well, I remembered you had asked on Facebook for suggestions for a title, and I thought I had suggested Stairway to Heaven, but evidently decided not to go in that direction. So that's
Yeah,
okay. I'm not
that
taking it.
was a tough one.
Yeah, I know. I thought I was quite proud of myself for coming up with that. But anyway, and as you mentioned, if folks are interested in contributing to your efforts to send relief, they can go to the church's website and find ways to donate there, or even get in touch with us at the Christian Chronicle, and we can point you in the right direction. So,
Right.
really appreciate the good work that you're doing there, brother, and on behalf of all those that are suffering right now, and we're praying for you. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Yeah. Hey, Eric, thanks so much. I appreciate all the work that you do. Again, it's just at the very least being able to put a spotlight on the need of the gospel on the reservations, and something that's really in our own backyards that we may not realize is the need is there. So appreciate your help and everything you do, Eric.